Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Okay, we're reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, Text 30. And Parampara Das. It is July 15th, 2023. Here in person we have Malini and Johnny, Tyler, and Devin. Online is Daru, Garuda, Kim, Rohini, Vladini, and George. So we'll start. We're reading it's Canto 3. Canto 3 is entitled, Canto 3, Part 1. Canto 3 is entitled The Status Quo. Chapter 5 entitled Vidura's Talks with Maitreya, and on text 30. 3, 5, 30. So we'll start with repeating each Sanskrit word from the word-to-word translation, just the Sanskrit part. Aham tadvat.
Aham tadvat.
Vikurvanat.
Vikurvanat.
Mana.
Mana.
Vaikarikat.
Vaikarikat.
Abut.
Abut.
Vaikarika.
Vaikarika.
Cha.
Cha.
Ye.
Ye.
Deva.
Deva.
Arta.
Arta.
Abhivyanjanam.
Abhivyanjanam.
Yata.
Yata.
I did prepare for this class, but I didn't think about the sense, didn't prepare for the Sanskrit so much. Then we'll repeat the Sanskrit one line at a time, responsively. Aham tadvat vikurvanam.
Aham tadvat vikurvanam.
Mano vaikarikadabhut.
Mano vaikarikadabhut.
Vaikarikascha ye deva.
Vaikarikascha ye deva.
Arta bhivyanjanam yata.
Arta bhivyanjanam yata.
Aham tadvad vikurvanam.
Aham tadvat vikurvanam.
Mano vaikarikadabhut.
Mano vaikarikadabhut.
Vaikarikascha ye deva.
Vaikarikascha ye deva.
Arta bhivyanjanam yata.
Arta bhivyanjanam yata.
Aham tadvad vikurvanam. Mano vaikarikadabhut.
Mano vaikarikadabhut.
Vaikarikascha ye deva.
Vaikarikascha ye deva.
Arta bhivyanjanam yata.
Arta bhivyanjanam yata.
Anyone else like to chant the verse?
Aham tadvat vikurvanam.
Aham tadvad vikurvanam.
Mano vaikarikadabhut.
Mano vaikarikadabhut.
Vaikarikascha ye deva.
Vaikarikascha ye deva.
Arta bhivyanjanam yata.
Arta bhivyanjanam yata.
Aham tadvat vikurvanam.
Aham Tadvat Vikurvanam Mano Vaikarikanabhut Vaikarikaschaye Deva Arta Vivyanjanam Yata
Aham Tattvat Vikurvanam
Aham Tadvat Vikurvanam
Mano Vaikarikadabhut
Mano Vaikarikanabhut
Vaikarikaschaye Deva
Vaikarikaschaye Deva
Artha Vivyanganam Yata
Arta Vivyanjanam Yata. Would anyone else like to chant the verse in person or online? We'll continue. The word for word translation. Aham Tadvat,
Aham Tattvat
from the principle of false ego.
from the principle of false ego.
Vaikurvanat,
Vaikurvanat
by transformation. Mana, the mind. Vaikarikat, by interaction with the mode of goodness. Abut, generated. Vaikarika, by interaction with goodness. Cha, also. Yea, all these. Deva, demigods. Artha, the phenomenon. Abhivyanjanam, physical knowledge. Yata, the source. Translation by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The false ego is transformed into mind by interaction with the mode of goodness. All the demigods who control the phenomenal world are also products of the same principle, namely the interaction of false ego and the mode of goodness. Purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. False ego interacting with the different modes of material nature is the source of all materials in the phenomenal world. Just realizing I don't have some notes here. So I'll chant some mantras. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who has established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahaganam Lalita Shri Vishikan Vitam Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Vijagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanang Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivatari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvashesha Sanyavadi Paschatya Devasatana. I'll chant some verses for invoking the Srimad Bhagavatam. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, and to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Shrinvatam Svakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ridi Anta Sohrit Abhadrani Vidunoti Suhrit Satam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Nasta prayeshu abhaitreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama sloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Okay, good morning. So, this part of the Bhagavatam, this is Vidura speaking with Maitreya. So I won't go into the story of how Vidura and Maitreya got to speaking to each other, but so Vidura is speaking with Maitreya, and Maitreya is in this part of the Bhagavatam. He's sharing about creation, actually creation of material creation. So he's presenting that, and so this is actually earlier in the Bhagavatam. Maybe it was like a year ago we were reading or something, where Lord Brahma is speaking about creation, and so this is like here we are now. Maitreya speaking about creation, and so specifically he's talking about the Mahatattva. Mahatattva is like the sum total of all material ingredients in their subtle form. So so this is like the dawn of creation, and specifically the dawn of creation in Brahma's, like in the Brahma's lifetime. So it's like the creation of all material universes. So this is creation of everything that we know in the material world. And so I was actually, I have some basic understanding, but I was like talking with Malini yesterday to like, okay, understand these principles of this process of it's sort of like all the material ingredients, energy, and unmanifested material energy and forms in this in a sum total, like a soup, primordial soup, and then the living entities are infused into that, really impregnated by Vishnu, and then with interaction of time and the living entity's desires, it's agitated. This is a very basic outline here. They're agitated, and then these subtle forms of material energy begin to develop into more less subtle, more gross forms, and more. So this is speaking about the previous verse. We're speaking about how the Mahatattva, which is that sum total of all material energy in unmanifested form, that it transforms into false ego. False ego is generated from the Mahatattva. And then this verse is saying that the Mahatattva, the false ego is transformed into the mind by the interaction with the mode of goodness. Earlier on in the verse, it speaks about how the Mahatattva is first, Prabhupada says that it's first tinged by the mode of passion, and that's what starts to agitate. And so this is you can see there's this process going from subtle to more gross. So the false ego is more subtle than the mind, and then the false ego is being transformed into the mind, which is a less subtle form. So this is like manifesting a material energy. So I was like having a conversation with Molly about this, and I was like, okay, it's hard to understand. It's kind of like, this is crazy, right? This is crazy. So let me get some rational understanding of the dawn of creation. Let me go to science, because this is
Science is not crazy.
Because
I go to Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
Way easier to understand.
Yeah. So this is crazy. So I was like, let me go to science. Okay, the Big Bang Theory, it's like established, it's widely accepted, so just here's some like rational, down to earth, clear explanation for like the dawn of creation, because this is just too crazy and stuff. Well, this was true for me. I was like, let me just read like what's fun, because so I watched a few videos, I did some reading. So here's some.
You made sacrifices for us.
I made sacrifices. Yeah. So I just want to hear like some just down to earth, practical explanation of that. The dawn of creation, for people who knowledge and it was widely accepted theory, like Big Bang. Everybody knows the Big Bang. So here's an excerpt from one of the videos I was watching. It says about the time of the Big Bang, because we all accept the Big Bang, right? Because the Big Bang. So it was all space stretching everywhere at once. The universe didn't expand into anything. Space was just expanding into itself. The universe cannot expand into anything because the universe has no borders. There is, by definition, no outside the universe. The universe is all there is. Like, that sounds kind of spiritual. Like, wait a minute, I just want some like practical, like what is, I just want some like XYZ kind of down to earth explanation.
Equations, some math.
Yeah.
Some chemistry, maybe.
So yeah, it's kind of mystical. Yeah. So it sounds very mystical. And then I went on and like watched another video, and then it describes. And actually, I would say that the modern scientific widely accepted theory of creation, it does a pretty good job of from when the supposedly things started happening to like the progression of where we are now, and actually you see some similarities. You see some that there's like basically there's more subtle forms of energy. There's actually an energy period, radiation period, and the matter period. So there's like a more subtle period of energy forming together, more subtle to gross forms, then to material matter actually forming. So like they do a pretty good job of explaining that part. So here's one step along the journey from the scientific perspective. Is in the Planck epoch, the Planck epoch. So no matter existed in the universe at this time. Only energy and the ancestor to the four forces of nature, the super force. Then gravity split away from the super force. Next came the grand unification epoch, named for the three remaining unified forces of nature. This ended with one of those forces called strong nuclear broke away.
What?
That's word for word. You know. Sounds like a superhero movie, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
okay.
there's a super force and there's unification. So, but yeah, but still, it's like, okay, it's explaining different forces and energies and how, you know, subtle to more gross forms. There's a lot of alignment there. But then actually, still to like make to make all of it work and like the mathematical equations, everything, there's quite a few leaps of faith that and things that need to be accepted to make it all work. Like one, like
You
one,
believe.
you need to believe. There's some, yeah, you need to believe like in dark matter. You need to believe in dark matter, which is a hypothetical form of matter, may be composed of some as of yet undiscovered subatomic particles. So perhaps, yeah. And then, and also dark energy, which is an unexplained phenomenon. It's an unknown form of energy. And also there may be some cosmological constant, which is a constant energy density filling space homogeneously, or one of those could perhaps be a scalar field, which is such as quintessence, which is maybe a fifth fundamental force. There's four fundamental forces that are known, and there could be a fifth one maybe. So they say like the dark matter, dark energy is kind of like it's basically things, you know, that they can't explain or observe, and so then it's, you know, what is it? What is, you give it a name, give it something like that. So so like I said, so there's some pretty okay. So then what about the Big Bang? Like it does a pretty good job of like, and there's alignment with actually some, you know, with the Vedic description of like the evolution of from like this just subtle material energy into like more organized and more gross forms. But what about the Big Bang itself? So this is also from one of the videos that I watched. This is like a transcript from one of the videos. We don't, because like I said, it has a pretty good job from after the Big Bang happens to the rest of time, like the universe is expanding. Okay, that's also like in Vishnu, in the Vedic description, we see that like it's like Vishnu's exhalation, and so like there's like a natural expansion there, like the exhalation from Vishnu. So there's so a pretty good job of that. But then what about the Big Bang itself? Okay, we don't know at all what happened here. At this point, our tools break down. This was, I mean, I'll acknowledge this was a video for common people. It's not like a super scientific video. Maybe even for kids, perhaps, but you know. We don't know at all what happened here. At this point, our tools break down. Natural laws stop making sense. Time itself becomes wibbly wobbly. To understand what happened here, we need a theory that unifies Einstein's relativity and quantum mechanics, something countless scientists are working on right now. So don't worry, because they're working on it right now. And so it's just a matter of time. Okay, and so this brings up questions. Were there universes before our own? Is this the first and only universe? What started the Big Bang, or did it just occur naturally based on laws we don't understand yet? We don't know, and maybe we never will. So
More honest.
well, it's the fact. Yes, the fact. So
Most of them are just looking at one universe. One universe, not proper.
right, just one universe, because for the definition. So I guess the definition of the universe is all that there is. It's just in the universe. So yeah. So then I was like, well, this is troubling. So my realization was like, these are no matter where you go. I mean, you can go to some places to get some very like simple ABC kind of explanations of creation, creation stories. But if you really dive into something like this dawn of creation, it's a very complex and far out topic.
But you can go to the Bible.
It's quite simple, yeah, yeah. But so one of the things is the scientific explanation. it's my realization, the scientific explanation is no less far out, or it's even more far out, or what, it's just like, for my sense about it is that there has been a lot of that in the scientific community of comparing and contrasting with the biblical story of creation. So in this Vedic cosmology is not as well known or not as widely accepted, or maybe even just dismissed completely as being so primitive that it's like not even worth considering or whatever. So because yes, I mean, so actually the Big Bang Theory wasn't widely accepted until the like the 1950s. So it's like not very long ago, and really it was a development, and it really like probably our generation is like brought up in the heyday of the Big Bang Theory, because the 90s they really like strengthened it, in the 90s. So we kind of grew up just like accept, just big, that's it. But before the middle of the 1900s, it was the more widely accepted understanding of the universe was that it was infinite, and also like a steady state. They thought a steady state, and infinite, that there was no beginning to the universe. So like, and so apparently the fact that the scientific accepted fact that the universe was infinite was a problem for Christian creationism at that time, because it says there was a beginning. So that was a problem for Christian creationism, and then Big Bang was also a problem for Christian creationism because of the timeline, 13 billion years. It was a problem for Christian because it was like 6,000 years. So it was a problem. But like, there's no problem for the Vedic. There's no problem. There's no, like the universe is infinite. Like, yeah, the creation is infinite, and there's a beginning to this particular manifestation in this particular universe. There is a beginning, and because coming from the scientific perspective, okay, 13 billion years. Oh, the Bible says 6,000 years. Oh, but then it's like from the Vedic perspective, it's like we have hundreds and trillions of years of timeline. So that's like looking at the scientific perspective, like, oh, so puny, so sorry, you only have 13 billion years. So I think a lot of the like in the Henry David Thoreau on the back of the Bhagavad Gita, he says, "In the morning I bathe my intellect in the stupendous and cosmogonal philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, in comparison with which our modern world and its literature seem puny and trivial." So yeah, this timeline, 13 billion years, it's puny and trivial. This particular beginning of this universe and this, which they've done a pretty good job of explaining, or understanding from 13 billion years of it, but not the beginning. But okay, give them at least credit. They got the 13 billion years of kind of like, they got the map laid out. Okay, that's so puny and trivial, because it's just one. We're talking about one lifetime of Brahma, which is just like in one universe, which is just like a lightning flash compared to the exhalation of Vishnu, which is like hundreds of trillions of years. And how many Brahmas are in? So yeah, we're just very puny and trivial. But we can give credit. This is a good explanation if you accept all these other things, dark matter and all this. And yeah, and just to let you know that Big Bang Theory is on its way out. So
Multiverse theory.
Multiverse, yeah. Ooh. Also big bounces. Not the Big Bang, it's a big bounce because yes, another theories of that is expanding, and then once it expands, then it contracts, but then maybe just keeps expanding again and retracts. That sounds a lot like inhalation and exhalation of Vishnu, right? So So that's on the horizon, and also multiverse. So with string theory, multiverse, and so none of these are a problem for Vedic.
To accommodate.
To accommodate, like none of these are a problem. It's not even a blink. It's like okay, but perhaps in some cosmologies or just creation, spiritual creations, then it is a problem. But it's like big bounces. That's it. In and out, exhalation of Vishnu, multiverses. Yeah, there's a whole this universe is like a mustard seed in a big bag of mustard seeds. It's like one seed out of it. Yeah, no problem. Multiverse, we got it. You want
Singularity.
You want singularity. Infinite density. We can do that. We can do string theory. We can do it all. Like, bring it on. So yeah, that was one other thing I'll just mention. That so with string theory, there's part of that theory involves colliding enormous membranes much larger than the universe. So that's pretty fun.
Where did it come from?
Earlier the universe is all there was. So anyway, this is.
It didn't seem that your mind got satisfied.
No. My mind didn't get satisfied from that. But yeah, that's the idea. Is like that. It's like if you're listening to someone, and someone's just like sure, like I know this. I heard from authority. Here's the response, and you're talking to another person, and they're saying like. I don't know, I'm sure this is the answer. But then like 5 minutes later, they're like, oh, wait a minute. I changed my mind. I think actually it's probably more like this, or like, no, actually, and actually it's more like this. They keep changing their mind, and then you kind of notice that like everything that this person is saying is kind of lined up with what the original person who was very sure was saying. That it's kind of like, where do I put my trust? Where do I put my faith? Should I put my trust and my faith in this person who's like keeps changing their mind and changing their story, and like, or like the person who's like story hasn't changed and like is very sure, and everything the other person is saying like fits in with what they're saying. It's kind of like, who would I trust in a real world situation? So yeah, it gives me more faith and trust in this explanation, and to like dive in further to this creation, the story of this pastime of the creation. So otherwise, just want to speak a little bit about false ego. A little bit false ego, mind, just the. Because I mentioned how they were. The mind is less subtle. It's more gross than the false ego. So this is like things are material energies manifesting from subtle to gross, and so the and Prabhupada says in the purport. I didn't really say much about this actual translation in purport, but Prabhupada says false ego interacting with the different modes of material nature is the source of all materials in the phenomenal world. So at least on an individual level, on a personal level, then the spirit soul having desires, according to the desires to and I can go back to the scientist, but so the spirit soul having desires that are separate from Krishna's desires of pleasing Krishna, then the spirit soul comes in contact with material energy, and then by identifying with material energy, the false ego develops, and that's like the most subtle covering over the spirit soul. So like a lot of there's some spiritual traditions like so-called spiritual traditions, is to get rid of the ego, or rid the ego. The ego is bad. So we're making a distinction here. The ego just means like sense of who I am, and we are something, that our true identity is part and parcel of that supreme, of the universal whole, part and parcel, and personal. That the supreme is personal, is a person, and that we are also parts and parcels, and personal parts and parcels. And so that's our true identity, and then that we've by interaction with material energy, then we've become illusioned, and that subtle covering is the false ego. And then and so this, false ego transforms into mind. There's a very close relationship between the false ego and the mind. And so in our sort of individual cosmology, we have the false ego covering the spirit soul, and then there's the intelligence. Intelligence is less subtle than false ego, and then the mind, which is less subtle than intelligence, and then the senses, which are less subtle than the mind, and more gross, still subtle, still subtle. And so the function of the mind is to accept or reject. Accept or reject. It's at least one of the functions of the mind. The main function of the mind, to accept or reject. And so in the conditioned state, interacting with false ego, being influenced by false ego, then we accept and reject based on our conditioning, our previous karma, and our desires, material desires, and kind of basically, and also according to if our senses are unrestrained, uncontrolled, then according to our senses. So the senses either are attracted or repulsed. So the senses are either attracted by some sense object or repulsed by some sense object, and then if the mind is uncontrolled, unrestrained, then the mind will accept or reject based on that. But then, it's advised that we train the mind. We use our intelligence. We use our intelligence to right. And then it's not just that the intelligence is like a part of the mind or a function of the mind. Prabhupada makes a distinction about intelligence, that it's distinct from the mind, and that we can use the intelligence to control the mind. And the function of the intelligence is to make distinctions. So we're advised to, by listening to by following the authority of Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada, chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, then we purify and we can have the potential to master that ability to make those distinctions. So that's what mastery is, to be able to make finer and finer and more important distinctions. So by training the intelligence, purifying the intelligence through, and Prabhupada gives us a very practical program to purify the intelligence, following the 4 regulative principles, that by vegetarian diet, not eating meat, it's a very good way to cloud the intelligence and to dim the intelligence. And also it's recommended in the Vedic scriptures, like milk products, dairy dairy products for the finer intelligence to be able to make fine spiritual distinctions. And so yeah, not eating the results of like basically meat is in the mode of ignorance, so not eating things are in the mode of ignorance will help us with our intelligence. That kind of makes sense. And then avoiding illicit sex outside of marriage, or sex not for procreation. So that's also it increases the false ego. It's based on the illusion that I am this body. So that will clouds the intelligence. And no intoxication. That's kind of obvious. Intoxication. If we want to develop our intelligence and purify our intelligence, and also to avoid gambling. Gambling, like taking risky behavior, kind of looking for the easy way out, just leads to bad character, leads to lower behavior that clouds intelligence. So Prabhupada, and the big plus is to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So no matter what you're doing or not doing, you can add the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and it has an effect to purify the intelligence wherever we're at. and then like Prabhupada advises, if we want to be serious about learning to purify our intelligence, to be able to control the mind, to control our senses, then it's recommended to follow the 4 regular principles and chant at least 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra Japa each and every day. Thank you for your attention. If anybody have any questions, I'll read the verse one more time. Aham tadvad vikorvaram mano vaikarikad adbut vaikarikaschaya deva arta bhivyanjanam yata. The false ego is transformed into mind by interaction with the mode of goodness. All the demigods who control the phenomenal world are also products of the same principle, namely the interaction of false ego and the mode of goodness. False ego interacting with the different modes of material nature is the source of all materials in the phenomenal world. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, I have a question. Curious. I appreciate your elucidating the Vedic description of the origin of the universe, and then kind of bringing into conversation contrast with the scientific kind of prevailing scientific explanation. My question is, I'm struggling to put it into form of a question. I think really it's like, I feel like my perception is there's a sense of almost like a disdain for science, like modern science.
Yeah.
And so I kind of want to challenge that. Prabhupada spoke about Krishna consciousness as a spiritual science.
Right.
Right. And so it's like, I'm wondering, I guess the question is like, where's the issue with science?
Yeah.
Quote unquote, broadly speaking, right? Like I think it would be helpful to be a little more specific, to have meaningful dialogue, because I think it can be quite problematic and regressive to be kind of like thinking like, oh, modern scientists or science is like garbage, they're silly, they're stupid.
Yeah.
That can be quite, create a lot of issues for people's advancement, materially and spiritually.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to open that up for you.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So Prabhupada wants us to, and this is actually, thank you for that. Because this is, there's Bhaktivedanta Institute, there's Prabhupada wanted to establish institutions and organizations and schools and programs to elucidate and to teach this like Vedic science as like yeah. So that I think, and I think we have a responsibility to to promote this Vedic understanding because yeah, I think my sense is part of it the opposite, whereas like the other side of like the scientific kind of looking down upon creationism, so to speak, or whatever you want to say, is partly due to like a lack of knowledge, and that the Vedic perspective has not been they don't know or whatever it is, because it's quite easy to go against Adam and Eve and 6,000 years, whatever like that. So so yeah, and then yeah, my sense is like to be more specific about modern scientists, because yeah, this is actually, like I said, reading the scientific perspective gave me more faith in in the Srimad Bhagavatam's description, because then I'm seeing like, well, these are all like, this is all yes, this and more, and how it's all encompassing like all of these theories, and then they're actually proving things scientifically that line up with the Vedic conclusions. So this is good. That's exciting, actually. I feel like that's exciting. Where we'll go next with the multiverse and this different things. So I think the my issue, I think, what Prabhupada would bring up is like the atheistic nature of like what modern science has become. Just like before the mid 1900s, that it was widely accepted that the universe was infinite. So yeah, up until recently, it was widely accepted that the scientists were of religious beliefs and spiritual conception, and really were like doing this work for God, and saw it as like part of their mission and service, or they were affiliated with the church or whatever like that. So I think that it's like that's the tendency, and it's really the tendency in all of us to be envious of God and to reject God and want to be God. That's really like the thing to root out, not necessarily like modern science or like these discoveries or to ridicule, but to so yeah, like so that the like these things that are unexplained or like the dawn of creation, like how did the Big Bang start? Like it's like, well, what about God? What about God is the one who started the Big Bang? It's like a simple explanation. It's a simple explanation. So yeah, is anyone else? Anything? Yeah, shining.
Yeah, in response to what you're saying, I met quite a few people who see kind of science as their spiritual master.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm only going to be led by my own intellect, and like, here are the facts by science, which is a completely credible source, and so I'm just going to put all my faith and investment into that.
Yeah.
And instead of like being open to God, like you were saying, it's kind of like a very atheistic perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a danger because like, we are all lost children in a sense, and then if you come to a lost child and you try to divert him and say, well, you don't have parents. What's happened is that there was an explosion and you were just in the middle of the street, and that's where you were found, and deal with that. That's your life. instead of like, no, in fact, I found you and you have parents. No, you just find your parents. So that atheistic part, that's disturbing, and the other part that's disturbing, additionally to what's said, is that science poses themselves as such an authority. I have a lot of people in my life who respond like, is it scientific? Is it proven? Is there any experiment about that? And that's okay when it comes to rational science. Okay, like things that deal with material.
Yeah.
But when science comes from a perspective of rationality versus sentimentality, and science presents perspectives that are not rational, like what Parampara presented, like Darwinism. There is no proof of Darwinism whatsoever, but then the whole society, and that's the problem, to lead humankind. Much of Darwinism I have deeply inside me because as a kid, I absorbed it, and even so, intellectually I know, okay, I don't come from a monkey, let's say. That there is moment to moment in all our lives that are influenced by Darwinism, for example, which is a very atheistic way to look at evolution, for example. And the fact that science always put forward that we are rational and believing in God is not rational, while at the same time presenting things that are not rational, that are not based on science, that are not based. Science means you have a hypothesis, and then you do the experiment, and then you have your proof. And then that's science. But in many things in science, they have a theory, an hypothesis that's not proven by any fact, and it becomes fact. And that's very dangerous because it's misleading generation and generation of humans towards atheistic way of thinking. And that's where the problem is.
There's a verse in the Bible that says, do not lean on your own understanding. And I have a friend who is like a Christian for a lot of his life, and he's now in his like late 50s. And he's very much, science is the only answer. There's no God unless he can be proved by science. And I feel like that way of thinking can also, it's sending a message like, I am God. My intellect is like elevated above spirituality. And part of spirituality, I believe, is having faith. Not having, okay, well, here's the equation all like processed out. So here, now you know everything. You don't require faith.
Well, it requires a lot of faith to believe in science. It requires so much faith. More than to believe in God, because we have proof of God, like experience. But it requires so much belief in faith.
But in the same way,
in science.
if you will only believe in God if you don't require faith, then
Yeah, then you require faith to believe in science. So,
map it all out.
it's natural for us to have faith. So where do we put our faith? Like, eternal knowledge descending, or temporary, movable, changeable knowledge that are ascending from human brain. That's a question of faith, Like it takes a lot of faith to believe in science.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a few responses to share. I appreciate your sharing. One thing is, I think, what comes to mind for me is it's not, it sounds like we're using the word science as a shorthand to represent something else. You describe science as a certain methodology, right? That's one understanding of science. But also, like I said before, Prabhupada used the word science also. So there's different ways of understanding what the word science is and what science means. And I think, we need to be careful about how we talk about that, because in our society today, there is a danger. There's definitely the danger you mentioned in terms of atheism and telling somebody, this is not the way it is, and that sort of arrogance. And I think that might be more helpful to use, like kind of words like the arrogance of, a modern industrial scientific complex or academic university, like similarly like business. I could be a businessman. There's a lot of corruption in business. Does it mean it's immoral to be a businessman? Right? Similarly, religion. So much blind faith, so much horrible things have been done in the name of religion. So just to be a little more nuanced, I'm trying to, that's my goal in this, is to bring a little more nuance into the conversation when we talk about science, like we're painting such broad strokes, but actually, I think the more we learn and study about, what is science and how to be scientific, we realize there's not so much of it's not a this or that. They're not in odds,
But there's something.
right? They actually could be very synergistic.
Yeah.
Somebody who's truly like, when you learn about Einstein, revered scientist, and you could also hear so many quotes that he shared about God and his faith. And so somebody who's going deep into these subject matters, they're not at odds with each other. They're not this or that. So that kind of tension, when I see that kind of makes me uncomfortable, because it's sort of like, we're not going deeper. We're not thinking deeper, and we're kind of creating these stereotypes and generalities and labels of anybody who's in this or like that. And that's quite dangerous. So I feel like that's what I want to challenge, and to kind of be a little more nuanced and a little more deep in our understanding of what is science truly, rather than
I believe that Parampara did a very good job of doing that by presenting, for example, that science used to be God conscious, and in fact the goal of any science which is to observe, understand, dive deeply, any science, if it's done properly with the spirit of inquiry, with the spirit of discovery, with the spirit of wanting to know, will lead to God. Any science will lead to God, and I think Parampara did a very good job at presenting that, in a way that lets us to understand that, there is problem with modern arrogance of science, which just stop by our theory is a theory, and the real scientists, they are going to land on God. They have no other place to go. At one point, they are going to experience the limitation of their intelligence and mind, and they are going to, like many scientists, they accept God. So science leads to God. So what we are speaking is about modern arrogance of like our theory is the theory, even though there is no rational proof, and it takes a lot of faith to believe in that.
Yeah, that's definitely dangerous and irresponsible. And I would say that's not scientific.
That's not scientific.
Right. And so the issue
not scientific.
is more like
science is
the arrogance of that person, the irresponsibility of that, the deceit, right? It's not honest. I think that's more those character flaws. Those are where the issue is, right? It's not like.
But it's a character flaw, but when a society as a whole is led by that character flaw, that's when it becomes a problem. Like Darwin may have been very arrogant of believing in this God. Okay, that's a character flaw. But then because his theory was accepted by society, then that's become like, okay, well, we need to, like, there's a lot of brainwashing happening, and in a sense, it's about like awakening people now awakening.
Right.
Wake up, like you're being brainwashed.
Yeah.
Believe in something that's just based on pure faith.
Right.
And faith in someone who has, the full defects of human beings.
Correct.
Like that.
I agree.
So it's just different. But yes, science, the goal of science is to discover God. It cannot be anything else. Well, the goal, the the goal and the natural unfolding
Mhm.
of any science is going to lead
Mhm.
to God.
Yeah.
Like Sankhya philosophy,
Yeah.
which is about, observing and analyzing everything. It takes a long time. That's the fact that takes a long time.
And Louis Pasteur has a quote I've seen. Accredited him. He was the one who created pasteurization.
Mm.
And he said, the first sip of the natural sciences will make you an atheist, but at the bottom of the glass you'll find God. Similar
Yeah.
to what you're saying, like that genuine inquiry. If we're doing it without self-deceit, without arrogance, without all those character flaws, then that's going to bring us to that conclusion.
Yeah.
That's really
Because there will be always a point where I don't know.
Yeah.
There's no way to know.
Yeah.
But by devotional service,
Right.
by serving God, then God is going to give you that knowledge.
Revealed from
It will be
within.
revealed
Yeah.
from within or revealed through chakra.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's some comments online. We'll get to Daru and Houdini Shakti. And we have time. And well, yeah, I think maybe it's like it's challenging to be more nuanced, like to just paint science with a broad brush. Maybe it's like scientism.
Yeah.
Maybe that's like the thing
that's it.
of like
Yes.
where it's like presenting, and also like the tendency for science or scientists to present themselves as like categorically different from religious understanding or spiritual understanding, whereas like we're saying, like there's a lot of leaps of faith and things, and it's like, well, what do you do whenever you get to that point where, okay, I don't know anymore, I'm reaching the limits, then what it seems like has a tendency to happen is then we create a new hypothetical thing like dark energy, and then it's like a rabbit hole. It's a rabbit hole. It's like I was going. It's like, okay, there's dark. Like what was the thing? What was one of the things that I said?
And I think to me that's not necessarily a problem, but also what happens too is they'll just disparage, like they'll just make fun of or just disparage religion, and it's like that's not a scientific argument. That's a very weak.
So like there's a rabbit hole with them. Like for instance, like dark energy is like something that's like they don't understand. So then it's like, let's make a hypothesis of what this could be. And then there's even a step down from that of like, well, what is an example of what dark energy could be? And it's like a quintessence, and it's like, let's make a theory of like, and so it's like, rather than, because the place there could be humility and accept like some other process, like, okay, I've reached the limits of studying, but then there's like this tendency to be like, well, we're not figuring it out now, but we will figure it out later, and so it's just like and then to present that like, well, there's no faith, this is all like reasonable, and that we're categorically different than like spiritual understanding, whereas it's kind of like at least put them on level ground or equal ground, like at least.
And that's so people can choose
Yeah.
their faith.
Right. Well, I know Daru has a comment.
Hey, Bo.
How you will?
Yeah, I was just thinking when you were speaking about how the scientists, they don't put it in these words, but it's like we used to believe this, but now, due to advances, we now believe this and teach it. But that's it's cheating, because it's the old thing. Well, how about in the future? Whatever you're saying you believe now may completely change. And it's not like they really make that as a clear thing, nor the fact that they believed so strongly before, and now that's changed. So again, I like your distinction between scientism or like that's the only way to go, the dualistic in a way. It's just I'm just saying we like science. My guru says he likes the fact that the doctors know so many new things, but it's just not that they give them all the credit for everything. We'll use a plane, we'll use a hospital, but it's just they don't know everything, and they should just be more honest about that. That's all. Again, we now just say more like we used to think this, now we think this, pretty sure about it. But if future shows us something different, we'll change that and say that. That's all. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Daru, for Hare Krishna. Ladini Shakti. Did you want to share something, Ladini Shakti?
You're on mute, Ladini.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. I'm sorry, it took me time to unmute. Yeah, I'm appreciating this conversation and what comes to me, and I think that's really interesting. That's the point that Mother Malini made, that the science like leads to realization of God when it's sincerely done. And like in my experience, you know, and it's very limited experience, but still, like people who are like scientists, like on the top level of each scientific field, they get there. And like any subject matter that we study just a little deeper than like primary school or high school, it becomes really obvious, these like scientific questions. So even, you know, at the veterinary school, I went deep into biology and chemistry and evolution, you know, like these subjects. And it was like clearly presented that there is more questions than answers. And so like, I am like really, you know, in question, like who are these scientists that are like presenting the science as the truth to the children at the primary school and high school? And I do think that it relates like, it's like what we want, like Maya, our deal with Maya is that she keeps us in illusion to like prevent us to know God unless we are really sincere about it. But like this point, like where from like the top level science to the primary school, when it transformed into like, oh, we know it's like this, I really don't know. Like even at the university, that wasn't like a very top level university, and it was all corrupted by the pharmaceutical industry and all that. But it was just obvious that it's all questions.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Right, because, yeah, okay. So top level science is even, there's so many questions like with these theories and stuff, but somehow dissemination, especially down to children, perhaps it gets is transformed into some kind of like certainty or just widely accepted, you know, truth or just reality. So yeah, that's speaking to some of the danger there, like on a societal level.
Yeah, and I also want to add that I did learn at my primary school, like the theories, like the theory about the, you know, whatever theory about the origin of the universe and the theory about the origin of life on the earth. And we were like presented all sorts of theories, including the creation of God, like that God created it. And our teacher, you know, she was like laughing at it. She was like, yeah, that's for the stupid people or whatever. But at least like it was presented, like we got like all the like different like ideas how it happened.
Yeah, that's true. I think in my school also, it was creation was acknowledged. In some schools systems,
Knowledge and left that.
at the debate. Well, it depends who the teacher is. If the teacher's, you know, big. Jim, how you doing?
Eating an apple, though, you know, it's not that credible.
Are you talking about Adam and Eve? Jim had some comments. He said he couldn't hear Malini. I don't know if there was something particular that you couldn't really hear Malini, but Jim also said Einstein is awesome.
Yeah, and I also, Parampara, if I might say one more thing, I really want to appreciate your class. I think it was wonderful, and you really got my attention for these topics about creation, which is usually not so much my cup of tea, but like you like made it really fun.
Okay, good. Thank you for that.
I have a question.
Devin, Jim said don't give me a big head by giving me too much appreciation.
Oh, yeah. This is what's hurting my head is I was really focused on this interaction and what it means about the false ego and the mind being transformed. The false ego transformed.
Yeah, I avoided that. I avoided
Yeah,
that.
because it's like a hole to fall into. And that's what my my mind likes to like fall into holes. I guess kind of my question is like around that and everything we discussed is like, do I actually really have any original thoughts? You know, do I have any original thoughts? If everything's created, subtle moves to growth, and my mind is having thoughts, and even more subtle to the point of I'm a non-material living entity, the spirit soul, but then I'm acting in this world through the gross material body, and the mind, you know, is one of the more subtle but still material elements. I just was like, you know, really connected with everything that was shared. I still connected with, oh, there's the theory of Darwinism. You know, somebody, you know, Darwin, he put that out there, and then it was like, well, nobody came up with anything really, you know, at that moment, you know, it got put into the textbook, and it's like, well, are there 8 theories of creation, and then we should put them all in there? It's like, that's the only one I remember from primary school, you know, connected to that. So if I just come up with, for example, you know, I'm going to try to have an original thought about creation. There was, let me just think about it really hard. Let me just make up the most fantasy thing about creation. There was like, what would I, you know, and it's like, I go to all these movies, all these people have tried, you know, to put together fantastical explanations about how things happen, you know. I mean, I'm in the world of Marvel, there's the gauntlet with all the power gems, you know, and the kids love this, you know, because it's like, oh, wow, and they want, the kids are having amazing, it seems like kids are having amazing kind of original creativity in a lot of ways, in a lot of forms.
For sure.
But, you gotta go.
Take it to go.
But just if there's some way, how would I have an original idea? But then
Take it to go.
a little bit of response to my own question is like, then what I find in the Vedas is more fantastical.
Yeah, yeah.
Than anything I can imagine. There seems to be always something more in these books, in these ancient texts and wisdom traditions, like came out of the nose of the boar, like what? Like, you know, like what? Or the boar came out of the nose of Vishnu, or you know, like,
yeah, so it's like, yeah, that's what I was speaking.
Yeah, well, yeah, I have it wrong, but like my mind doesn't go there. My mind like just stretched to come up with some fantasy idea, but there's always something more amazing and far out here. So
more out than any movie, any science fiction movie.
Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of the only response I have to my own question is like, can I think of anything original? Well, I'm taking, you know, different colors that already exist, and I'm making a color, and it's sort of like, okay, I made this shade of a color, and I see that's original. I mixed 2 things, but they already existed. So that it's not like I'm the source. It's not like I created 2 colors, you know, or I created this one color. It's a combination of things. So my mind, I know, can combine things.
Yeah.
And we call that original. But then that, I think, speaking to this, it feeds the false ego sense that I'm the creator, I'm God, I'm at the center. I have original thoughts and ideas. And so, yeah, I think science is like science, not the scientific method necessarily, which we can use to study things less intelligent. But they're not so effective at like even a social level, right? Because it's the same intelligence. Definitely not effective to higher intelligence. Scientific method doesn't work on something with higher intelligence. You can study. So yeah, it just leaves me wondering, like, okay, yeah, what is it? Just the speculative sort of like risk-taking gambling.
Thanks for class.
How can you leave?
I know, I'm sorry. I have to get to class for Taylor.
We're gonna go.
Need you give me? So yeah, I hear like it's like right. That's why I was appreciating it so much. It's like, yeah, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Veda description is like, yes, all of that, whatever science gives, whatever Hollywood gives, all of that and more. Like it's like we got that covered, and there's more. And I appreciate your question. You're like thinking about, do I even have original thoughts? And I think it's like a healthy question, a healthy spirit to be in, because yeah, they're acknowledging like the mind. Yeah, we're not the mind, so these thoughts aren't necessarily, the mind is so closely, is, has such a close relationship with the false ego, so affected by the false ego that, these thoughts that are in my mind, there's nothing special about them, there's nothing auspicious about, like, it's at least have some separation there, that, that we have a choice of, we can control the mind, control the thoughts, and so I appreciate that, like, question to be in, like, what is really mine? And my understanding is that what's really mine is my desires, that I can choose where to put what I desire. I can, like, direct my desire. That's like where I have choice. Yeah. Thank you very much for your listening and attention. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Tim has been meditating on that topic a lot lately. I could.